Initially, I think I thought this story might have been just about abuse of power. Here was a guy, sheriff of Wall Street, suddenly he's using escort services, you know. But I guess what interested me about this film, and I'm certainly interested in abuse of power, and I'm interested in power generally, and how it's used, how it's misused. But I think with this story, it was a little bit different because I was offered this film. And it took me about a week to decide to take it on. But one of the reasons I decided to take it on was everybody was talking about it, and they were talking about it for a lot of different reasons. It was about sex, it was about fidelity, it was about marriage, it was about power, it was about the economy. Here was the sheriff of Wall Street taken out, seemingly, or taking himself out, depending on your point of view, right at the moment when we seem to be racing toward economic Armageddon. So there was a lot here. And it occurred to me, well, maybe I'll just tell the story and see what I find out, and that in itself may be something powerful. I wasn't quite sure what to make of it, and that was, in a way, the most intriguing aspect of the story. It seems obvious in a way, scandal, sheriff of Wall Street comes down, but there were a lot of questions about it. I wasn't sure what the answers were, and that seemed like a pretty good reason to make the movie. You know, what is it about the Republicans that they can just, you know, maybe it started with Jimmy Swaggart. I mean, you could just wail and moan and apologize and weep and then just move on and never resign, never take accountability. I mean, you know, Vitter did the same thing, exactly the same thing as Spitzer, even worse, really, because he ordered prostitutes while there were roll call votes in Congress. So, and he's about to be reelected as senator from Louisiana. So it's hard to know. I mean, I think I guess, you know, the Republicans are sometimes very fond of calling people out as hypocrites. But it seems to me that hypocrisy, very often, thy name is Republican. And of course, there are plenty of Democratic scandals, and there's plenty of Democratic sex scandals. But the Republicans seem to get away with it because, you know, much like their approach to the market, their approach is law of the jungle. And their approach is, so I want to stay in power. It's important to me to stay in power. Nothing's going to prevent me from staying in power, so I'm going to stay in power. And my principles certainly aren't going to get in that way. Well, lately, one of the things that's become interesting to me is self-deception. In other words, how does corruption possible? And psychologically, how is it possible? And very often I find that it's possible because people who assume that they're good or take a very, you know, reinforce somehow the idea that they're good, then believe that because they're good, they can't do bad. And that's kind of the first step down the road to corruption. If you are the great one, and I think Spitzer, in his own way, fell prey to that, as did his enemies on Wall Street. But the idea that, look, I'm doing good work, you know, I'm helping people, and he was. But he felt, I think, that gave him license then. If I'm doing so much good, how can what I'm doing be bad? And that was very much the attitude also of the people on Wall Street that he was rudering against. Their view was, who needed a sheriff of Wall Street? Markets are self-regulating. Why would we need that? Besides, business is good. Business is not bad. Greed is good. So that's what interests me about corruption, is that first step, the little steps that you take because you assume, well, look, I can do something that's a little bit bad because I'm basically a good person. So what's the problem? But it's only when you've taken a lot of little steps that you look back and realize that the line was crossed a long time ago. I was about to say Hank Paulson, but maybe Hank Paulson, or maybe Dick Fuld.
Dick Fold, I'm not sure.
Lehman Brothers.
Oh, okay.
And the other person would be, of course, Lloyd Blankfein, Goldman Sachs, doing the Lord's work, as I think he said. What interests me about Hank Paulson is there's a guy who, well, he's a Goldman character, but he was also stuck in a situation where the very beliefs that he held dearest were radically challenged. You know, he's a guy who believes in the market self-regulating, and suddenly he was having to take enormous government power, or he wanted to take enormous government power, without recourse, by the way. So I think that would be fascinating.